introduced the queen into a colony that had a virgin there. The virgin killed the mated queen, the introduced queens, and then the third one is just the risk of disease. So I pulled out the final frame. There's like 3 swarm cells on it, and I was thinking, oh, that's really annoying. Will she survive or not? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you anymore. We put the queen in so that she has become the drone-laying queen. But honey contain EFB, it can contain AFB. I'm going to have to dig it out. There was one that was incredibly high, but the logic is she should. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Bees. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about was my brand new channel, 14-Day Beekeeper. We did a test on Black Mountain honey to try and do a new long form video every single day in May. It was a lot of effort, it was a lot of work, it cost quite a lot of money, and they tanked like really bad on YouTube. And it's proven to me that I produce way too much content for one channel. So the really nice positive benefit of that is there is officially going to be 2 channels now. So there is Black Mountain Honey and 14-Day Beekeeper. And if I just jump in here and share my screen, I'll be able to share with you the 14-Day Beekeeper page, which is here. 748 subscribers, but there are a few videos on there as well. So first up, you have to fix these space issues. You've got why I clip my queen bees. There's a really cool one coming up on that channel, all about how to raise as many queens as you can. My advice to you is to head over to that channel and see if you can hit the subscribe button. It is on Facebook, it is on YouTube, and it is on Instagram as well. So the distinction between the two is going to be quite simple. Black Mountain Honey is going to be about our products, our queens, and then 14-Day Beekeeper is going to be the place where you get advice to help you with your bees. I would say let the bees tell you when to Demaree. Really, really nice system, which is the brood box should be full, queen excluder on top, and then you should have a minimum of 2 supers full of bees. Now, a number of people come back to me and say, my bees never fill the 2 supers like that. I try and wait for it and try and get the 2 supers full, and then they swarm before they reach 2 supers. And I say, that is not a problem with the Demaree, that is a problem with your bees. If your bees are swarming consistently before they get up to 2 supers, there is a predisposition there from those bees to want to swarm as opposed to want to store honey. And if you're a beekeeper and you want to get like even just a bit of honey from your bees, then you need to control the genetics of it. But as soon as we hit June 21st and we hit the longest day, the solstice, and the days start shortening, double brood just becomes an option that I wouldn't really ever consider at this time of the year for me, because I want to get like a decent amount of honey off my bees at the end of the year. So it's about working out what you want. If you want maximum honey, I would suggest a Demaree. Let the bees tell you when you hit the 2 super trigger, and should be good. Much more likely, I would say the highest chance scenario that you've got there is that you introduce the queen into a colony that had a virgin there. The virgin killed the mated queen, the introduced queen, and then has tried to go out and mate, but there was a really terrible period of weather, so that she has become the drone-laying queen. You can replace her, definitely. Find that queen, kill her, wait 8 days, because there might be some open, decent brood in there as well that they can try and turn into a queen cell. Probably not, but still just wait 8 days and then add the new queen as normal. Should be good. The entombing in the fondant, I would say it's a really, really frustrating one when you open up a colony where you've introduced a queen and you see like a queen that's gone into the fondant, or the bees are stuck, or something's happened. And I look at it, and we introduced loads and loads of queens, and you can kind of tell as soon as you open up the lid whether the queen's been accepted or not by the behavior of the colony. Nothing to do with what they're doing with the cage. The cage is generally empty, but you can tell when there's been an issue and the queen's not got out of the cage just from the way that the colony is there. And again, 9 times out of 10, it's not to do with the queen, it's to do with the colony. So I'll go in and say, oh, I reckon the queen's still in the cage, and pull her out, and she is. And then you look around and you're like, okay, let's go hunting for her. And you find the virgin that's knocking around in there. So the entombing in the fondant is generally a sign of like something else that we've got wrong as beekeepers, and then it's resulted in entombing in fondant, because on a hopelessly queenless split with enough bees in there and you put a queen in a cage in there, if the introduction is successful, within a couple of days that cage is clean. So all the ones that you go in where the queens have been successfully introduced, you see perfectly clean cages, like there's nothing, there's no fondant, there's no bees, there's no nothing. They just go in, clear it all out. And then the ones where there's an error from the beekeeper, potentially a virgin or a cell left or some brood still open, you can see it, and then they're not cleared out, there's dead bees in there, the queen might be stuck. So it's generally that fixes it just by. The only way that you can confirm Nosema is to take a sample and put it under a microscope and like say, right, that is Nosema. It's the only way to confirm it. What a lot of people do is they'll see dysentery and they'll say, oh no, my colony's got Nosema, it's struggling. And it generally isn't Nosema. Being able to read your colonies and see what's going on and kind of sense it helps with things like this. It helps with the identification of what is going wrong. So I'll look at a colony and I'll see a really nice, vibrant entrance, a lot of activity, bees coming in, bees going out, and I'll think, okay, looking good, happy with that one. And then maybe you open up a colony and you see a really nice coordinated effort. All of the bees are on the frames. They're not coming up on the top bars. They're just doing what they need to do. And you think, yeah, the queen is in there. We've got a nice brood nest. And then you look over and you kind of think, oh, that colony does not look good over there. What's going on there? Because where there should be a really nice buzzy entrance, there's just a few like odd bee knocking around. And oh, what's on the hive? There's loads of dysentery all over the hive. What's going on? So then you go in there, and my favorite thing, 9 times out of 10, but it's kind of 90% of the time, you can say, well, it's gonna be a drone layer. Like, it's gonna be a drone laying queen in there. You go in and you open it up, and it's not nice and organized. The bees are all over the place, like flying up as you open up the hive. And then you start to see the dysentery on the top of the frames, and you think, okay, it's not great. And then you pull it out, you find it's a drone laying queen, loads of drones, not that many worker bees. And what I do at that point, and my recommendation for you at that point, what I do is I just shake everything out, let them beg their way into any other beehives, and then I kind of reclaim and clean and scorch and sterilize anything that I can from the beehive and start again from scratch. And the reason that you get the dysentery in that situation there is that the bees just don't, there's no coordination. Hopefully that clears things up for you. Why would I say that? But you know what I mean. It's really, really bad idea to give any sort of honey back to the bees. A couple of reasons. One, if it's set, that it's gonna be very, very difficult for them to process it, and it's probably just gonna granulate all of the other honey that you've got. Two, if you wanted to bring it back to liquid, you're gonna be heating it, which if you don't do correctly, can increase the HMF to a point where it becomes like a bit toxic for the bees. And then the third one is just the risk of disease. It's really, really bad feeding any sort of honey, even if it's the exact honey that's come back from that colony. I would steer away from it. But honey can contain EFB, it can contain AFB, and if you feed that to your colony, you're just seeding it with disease. So it's not worth it. Sugar's pretty cheap. I would eat the honey, give the honey away to someone, and feed them sugar syrup, definitely. I did this, yeah, double brood colony, they're starting to swarm, and you look at it and you think, nice, there's 22 frames of bees there, probably 16 frames of brood. Our frames of brood aren't massive. 16 frames of brood, and 10 of the frames have got swarm cells on. So there's no way I'm just gonna split it in two. Like, let's split that into 7 nukes. I understand that, and I look at that and I think that's a good idea. Let's definitely do that. So I did that for a couple of years, and I'd split my colonies out like that. And then North Wales, remember, so our mating success isn't that great. I'd then come back to those bees later on in the year, but the ones where the queen hadn't gone out and successfully mated, or they become drone layers, they were literally down to like nothing. There was nothing salvageable left from the colony, because any brood that I put in there had emerged, and the bees had just got old. There weren't enough bees in there to go and get any honey, and obviously no proper mated queen, so either no brood or like a mess with drone brood. And I used to sit there and think, well, that's really annoying, because I've kind of, like, the swarm cells were free, so I put them in, like 50% of those splits. So what do we say? We're making 7 3-frame splits. So let's say 3 of the splits failed and took away 9 frames of resources that I could have used elsewhere. So it's not like you need to put mated queens in there, but I found the efficiency of using all of that resource in order to bank on a queen being mated is quite counterproductive. You're putting a lot of risk and a lot of resource on something that might not happen, where if you think about it another way, like, what do you want from your colonies there? Do you want to get as much honey as possible, or do you want the maximum amount of nukes going into the winter? It's working out like what's more valuable to you, like getting the queens for free or securing all of the resources from the hive. So I wouldn't recommend going that aggressive. That was just me making a point of how aggressive you could go. I would say from a single brood colony, don't split it into anything more than 3 nukes. If you want to go for honey, I would suggest just splitting it into 2 and taking down all of the swarm cells except 1. If you go down and get better mating success, maybe you're getting 80% mating success, then you can judge that for yourself. You can say, okay, well, do the queens maybe don't outweigh the cost now, because I'm going to get really high mating success, so I'm not gambling the resources. But if you think about it like that, something that we do teach religiously in 14-Day Beekeeper, then you should be good to go. Honey, it's set due to rapeseed, yeah, so definitely don't put it back in. Even if you warm it up, get it back to liquid, feed it back to the bees, it will just granulate again and take everything else with it. It's like the dice method inside the hive. So yeah, oilseed rape honey is really, really nice. I would be eating that. If you're getting foundation drawn out in the brood nest, and if you put that into your beehive in April and May, anywhere in the brood nest, the bees will just draw out drone brood. They do it every time. It's like, you give it to them and they say, yes, drone brood. And then give them exactly the same frame with the starter strip in September, they draw out exclusively worker brood. So it shows that at different times of the year, the bees want different things within the colony, and they will change the size and structure. You'll see it on worker foundation, where they kind of put a little bit of drone brood at the bottom or on the side. So they're reconfiguring things all the time. But as you see the colony build up, if you go in and do your first inspection in spring, say 1st of April, you go through every single frame, you might find 6 or 7 frames of capped worker brood, a few frames of stores, bit of pollen. You generally don't see any drone brood. You might see a tiny bit of it. But then if you go in middle of May, it's not uncommon to see like 2 full frames of drone brood. And I mean full, even without any sort of drone foundation or anything. They configure it themselves because they want drones at that point. The colony needs drones. The bees need to get their genetics out there somewhere, and this is the time of the year. So you can kind of track it. You can see as they're building it up. The first inspections, there's no drones. Second inspections, there's no drones. Third inspections, oh, okay, there may be some drones being laid there. Fourth and fifth or whatever, you get to a point where you say, oh, okay, there's a lot of drones here now. Colony's going to swarm soon. So I'm always looking at that when I'm doing my Demaree triggers and saying the bees need to be on 2 supers. I'm kind of looking at what's going on in the brood nest as well. And if I'm seeing a colony that's on 3 supers, but everything in the brood nest is worker brood, I'm thinking, let's just carry on going. Let's go 4 supers before we Demaree, because why not? And conversely, if I'm seeing just made it to 2 supers, like the bees have just got there, probably haven't. Let's say there's 20% left on the top box. So I normally wouldn't give them the trigger, normally wouldn't go ahead with the Demaree. And then I do my brood inspection and I see 2.5 frames of drone brood. And I'm thinking, or even 2.5 frames of drone brood and not that many eggs, but the queen's still there and everything's fine. I'm looking at it and saying they're gonna swarm, like they're gonna swarm next week. First thing, yeah, always look for the amount of drone brood that they're building there. And then the other side of that is that if it's 5 or 6 frames of drone brood, you've definitely got a problem. We're lucky in the UK, I've got my little one for this year over there. You can apply for these little sample pots and you put your honey in and you have to just like smush as much honey in as you can with all the wax and bits and stuff. And then it gets sent off to, I think it's the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, something like that. Sorry if I've butchered it, but they've got a honey sampling centre. So the idea for them is that they're tracking insecticides and chemicals and herbicides and things and traces of any of that might be in honey. Obviously we don't want any of that in honey. And then mapping it to see if there's any other issues. And then they provide that service to beekeepers for free and give them like a breakdown of the sugar content and the most interesting, the pollen analysis. And they have to take the pollen analysis with a pinch of salt, pollen coefficients that they place on them. And the reason for that is that you'll get a bumblebee going and foraging on some rhododendron, a great example, because up at the forest, it's full of very invasive rhododendron the honeybee can't access the nectar for. So you get a bumblebee going and foraging on all of the copious amounts of rhododendron. And then the bumblebee goes to, say, the clover and starts to forage on the clover. And then the honeybee goes and forages on that same bit of clover and picks up a bit of clover pollen, but picks up a little bit of rhododendron pollen, I should say, and then brings that back. So not only do you have to apply the pollen coefficients to work out how much pollen equals the composition of honey, but you also have to rule some of them out to say, well, the bees clearly aren't foraging on rhododendron pollen because they can't access it. However, it's really, really interesting. The last one I had, there was definitely one. I can't find it when I had it on there, and I'm gonna have to dig it out. There was one that was incredibly high that I had. It was up in the low 70s. It was wild. And then I looked at all the rest of them, and the rest of them are like 32, 33. So maybe it was a spurious result, and maybe it was bumblebees doing a lot of the hard work. But what's nice for us in North Wales is we have a huge variety of different flowers. When you look out, it's crazy. When I go down south and I look out and the fields are arable, like every single field is just growing something for humans. It seems like humans, maybe they're growing some stuff for animals as well. But up here, it is just grass and sheep and cows. It's nice, don't get me wrong, like it's nice. I like the sheep and the cows and the grass, but it's not that great for bees in terms of the quantity of nectar being produced. But it's really, really good for bees in terms of the variety of the nectar and the pollen that they have to go out and forage, because they've not just got like a one-stop shop. They can't just go to the oilseed rape next door and just say, yeah, that'll do. Just get that. That's easy. It's easier next door, that'll do. They have to work and they have to go out and find all of these different nectars. So a completely roundabout way of saying what's the number one. So for us, it's quite an even split between bramble and clover, which is strange, and that because you think, oh, it should be something like a little bit more exotic, but it's not. It's bramble and clover, and that's about 60%. And then the other 40% is made up of a lot of different ones. The ones that crop up all the time because we're close to the heather, so you always get a bit of heather in there. Generally ling heather. There is a tiny bit of bell heather up here as well. You get some rosemary willow herb. So adding those ones onto the clover and the bramble, I would say they're the majority of flows that we can count on every year. And then depending on the seasons, depending on the flows, depending on the weather, you'll get some kind of other trees, some nice trees in there as well. So maybe some sycamores, maybe some lime trees. But it is a very, very nice, it's a nice honey, and I quite like bramble and clover honey. So pulling out all the frames to make up this nuke, and pulled out 5 perfect frames, like capped brood, pollen, stores, everything's right. Apart, there was no eggs. And I was thinking, where's this queen gone? Don't tell me she's swarmed. So I pulled out the final frame, and there's like 3 swarm cells on it. And I was thinking, oh, that's really annoying. Looked on the other side, and there's about 7 swarm cells on it. So it's definitely swarming. The queen had definitely gone. And then I thought, that's really, really annoying, because we're halfway through the video here. Like, what do I do here? Do we just start again? We start again and just pack it up, because it's gone quite well. Like that's really, really good. So I'm thinking, what can I do here? What can I do here? And then I kind of looked up and I was like, we got all the mated queens over there, like the UK mated queens. They're right, we're picking them. They're laying queens. Like I can just go and pick a queen out of a mating nuke and drop her in the nuke. Will she survive or not? I don't know. But the logic is she should survive. You pick up a laying queen that's literally there from like laying an egg, and you put her into a hopelessly queenless colony, which it was. The logic says that the queen should be accepted. I'm not going to tell you anymore. We put the queen in, and I don't know how it ends. So when you see the video, you can remember back to the cliffhanger. I'm not sure whether it's going to be on Black Mountain Honey or 14 Day Beekeeper, so you should probably subscribe to both. There we go. That's all I'm going to say.